This is City Focus, the podcast from the League of Oregon Cities, where we explore the issues that matter to cities across Oregon.
Gentlemen, welcome to City Focus.
How you doing?
It's so good to have you.
Yeah.
We are here today to talk about a conference that both of you were participants at in Washington, D.C. recently, the United States Conference of Mayors. So before we kind of launch into what your experiences were, I want to start out with a brief introduction because I think most of our listeners know who you are. Mm-hmm. But Mayor Doyle, if you'd like to go first,
Sure.
You're Mayor Doyle. You're the mayor of the city of Beaverton.
Right.
What's a little bit about Mayor Doyle that people should know?
Well, it's the only strong mayor form of government in the state, so I don't have a city manager, and I love what I do, but it's a lot of hours. So, I got four granddaughters, and a couple of daughters. One who used to work for the league,
yes,
now
we miss
being a
Erin.
lobbyist at Washington County, and she does not miss the drive to Salem.
Yeah, I bet she doesn't.
She misses her mates down here, but so we're having a lot of fun up there, and I campaigned on making the city come into this century, and they had 12 new units of housing built in all the 20-plus years in downtown.
Wow.
Not what I was building up on the out, but now we're building down. We're now hitting our 700th new apartment in the last 5 years.
Okay.
Building some hotels, buying blocks, getting developers. And so we're having a blast. Just like I think everybody in the state, the economy is good.
Yeah.
And we're taking advantage of it as long as we can.
Definitely.
Because the price increases on construction just keep going up and up and up.
Yeah, they do.
But it's a lot of fun.
Mayor Pulliam, you are the mayor of the city of Sandy. So tell us a little bit about who Stan Pulliam is and what's going on in Sandy.
Yeah, well, one is I was born and raised in the Sandy community. And about 10 years after traveling around a little bit, my wife and I 10 years ago decided to move back to Sandy and raise our daughters there and to have our family in Sandy. Been around politics, worked through a couple of state legislative sessions in the past and did a little bit of work on the campaign side. Mm-hmm. And so, our community of Sandy is quickly growing. We're one of the top 5 fastest growing communities in the state. And it's really exciting. We kind of have this culture of a more traditional community. Mm-hmm. But then we've also radically became one of the top 5 communities in the state for youngest families. So we have a lot of new residents coming in that demand a lot more in services. And then we have a lot of infrastructure needs in Sandy to try to keep up with our growth. So that's kind of why I decided to run. I had a little bit of this experience in the state legislature, knowing how to advocate and get some dollars and to help us with some of our infrastructure projects, and decided maybe this was a time for public service and jumped in. And it's kind of a good segue. It's what brought me to the Conference of Mayors, was to advocate for a lot of that stuff.
Okay, well, you're right. That is a good segue. So one of the reasons that I asked both of you gentlemen here today is because you were both attending the United States Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C. last month. Because we're newly in February now.
It didn't snow.
And it didn't snow. Amazingly, we've had mild
It talked about it, but it didn't.
It talked about it. Yeah. It threatened. So I kind of wanted to give our members and our listeners a sense of what this conference is. Was it valuable for you to be there, and some of the takeaways that you walked away from? I was following both your social media feeds. You were engaged in all the activities and things that were going on. Very engaged back there. So Mayor Doyle, I'll start with you. Were there a couple of highlights for you in this conference that kind of stick out in your mind?
I think that the thing that all mayors would appreciate is that the mayors, large or small cities, they face very similar challenges. Yeah. And it's refreshing to be able to talk to people maybe at a meeting, on a session on about X, Y, or Z, but also outside the session, you can say, we've got this situation. What are you doing? And, you come away knowing that you're not alone, that everybody, a lot of things are very common, and we'll probably get to that, but, housing, people sleeping in tents, it's everywhere. And also sometimes you say, boy, I'm glad that I live where I live.
Yeah. That's interesting, too, because, obviously this is in D.C., Eastern Seaboard. The Eastern Seaboard is very different from the West Coast as far as everything. It's state. Mm-hmm. It's very much close together. Right. Is there a difference there in how smaller and larger cities deal with things because of the close proximity? Or is there just a lot that's just similar?
Well, I know that, where we live, Beaverton, Hillsborough, Tigard, we tend to do things cooperatively. Not just one city does the sewers, not just one city does the water. That is just like, what planet are you from when you talk to people? They can't even get the neighbor city up above them for not putting stuff in the river that they have to take back out.
That's right.
And I've been going to the meeting for 9 years. It's not inexpensive to be a member, but it's a smaller venue than the National League of Cities, and the focus is strictly on what issues do mayors face, and also how can we help the lobbyists there communicate our needs as cities to the lobbyists and the powers that be in D.C.
Okay.
And that is a challenge. And we all know that.
Yeah.
But we provide a unified front. We've got some great leadership. The presidents there are, some are from smaller cities, but some are huge cities. But we all know that we're in this thing together.
So you're a first-term mayor.
Yes.
Stan.
Yeah.
So how was this experience for you as a first-term mayor? And then I'm assuming this was your first time going to the conference.
Yeah. So in being a first-time mayor is a big reason why I ended up going to the conference. It was twofold for us a little bit. One is unlike some of the bigger communities, we don't have a paid lobby or government relations team. And so what this allowed for us to do is for me to go and kind of be that, I don't love this word, but our lobbyist, our government relations person. I was able to get meetings with Senator Wyden and Senator Merkley when we were in town to bring our projects in front of them. And then also what Mayor Doyle's talking about is just being able to collaborate with the other mayors, seeing what's going on, what others are doing, try to make the learning curve just a little bit less steep for me. But I'll tell you, this being my first conference, what I really took away from it is, and granted, this is because it's mayors who are really active in their communities, why they're part of the association and going, right? Yeah. But Republican, Democrat, wherever you are in the political spectrum, mayors in this country are getting things done. Yeah. And it's mayors that are on the front lines that have to deal with the issues that really those in Washington, D.C., and I would argue even somewhat in the state legislature, they just talk about. It can be fun to talk about and debate all these issues to the end, but mayors, we don't have the luxury of debate. We've got to identify problems and solve them. And so it's a unique opportunity a couple times a year to get in the same room with other individuals that face that same kind of leadership role and see what they're doing that works, and maybe more importantly, what doesn't work, and being open and collaborating with each other to figure out our best practices to kind of move the needle.
Yeah,
if I could
absolutely.
Point. Yeah. When you have discussions, nobody holds up their hand, I'm an R or I'm a D or I'm an I or whatever it may be. Both national parties have a group, they have a function for the Democratic mayors, function for Republican mayors. We don't even talk about what goes on. Everybody has a different thing that's going, because we're all in this. I know I sound like a broken record, but we're all facing the same things.
Yeah.
And, I hate the expression, but everybody says, the potholes aren't labeled an R or a D. Just think of something else.
Right. Mix it up.
The point is that we all face things together.
Yeah.
And, I just love the fact you can borrow ideas from people.
Yeah, I like that too, and getting together and sharing, because you're right, the challenges from mayors in New Hampshire, Oregon, Florida, whatever, they are similar. And mayors being very, very close, mayors and city councils, very close to the people. So were you, when in your interactions with really big city mayors, metropolitan, is there a difference in the interaction?
No.
I would have to imagine there would be.
I'll let the rookie take it. I want to hear what you're reading.
Yeah, I'll give you an example, which I thought was funny. Is I was in on the social media, talking about utilizing social media forum. And one of the leaders of that was a mayor from Oklahoma City. So obviously a much larger city community than the city.
Than
Sandy, right? And he posed an interesting question to the crowd, which is, how many of you do your own social media versus staff that out? And then took it to another, and his reaction to that was quite interesting, which is, you would never allow someone to travel around and speak behind a podium on your behalf. Why do you staff out that service? But took it to a next layer, which is talking about the interaction with the community members. Now, I do that quite a bit and answer a lot of questions, try to be as transparent as possible. And I've always wondered if it's just my community, because of the nature of our size, why I have to deal with that person's question and then I see him at Safeway the next day, right? Well, what I got from him no, I also have to see these people. And I also start to recognize the same name of the same person with the same comments over and over again. So it's big and diverse as some of our communities get. At the end of the day, we are facing a lot of the same issues, just on a different scale. And as a result, some of the solutions we can get ahead of it. In Sandy, I talk a lot about, I say, I love our homeless problem. And people go, what are you talking about? That is crazy. When I say what I like about it is that it's large enough where we can identify that we have a problem, but we're a small enough community where it hasn't grown into this full-blown disaster that we can't do anything about. So what can we do? What are other communities doing? What is Mayor Doyle doing in Beaverton? What are some of these mayors doing around the country where we can get ahead of it and actually invoke change and use some of the things that we learned before it grows into a problem? So whether you're a big city or small city, all the big cities do is face a problem a little earlier and a little sooner than the small ones. And so we can learn off of where they've gone right and where they've gone wrong, quite frankly.
So
a lot larger.
Yeah,
I would imagine that, you're talking homelessness, that there were common threads in certain concerns. Any common threads aside from this, which is a gigantic issue?
Well, this is one. When I was president of the Oregon League, Pete Truax and I just moved mental health from number 8 or 9 to we kind of squeezed it to be number 5 that year, and it's continued to be there. Everybody is finally talking about this issue. That's at the root cause of so many things we deal with. Yeah. And we could spend the next 20 minutes talking about that. But it's nice to know that at the city levels, they are saying we need help from the state, kind of giving up on the federal government in a lot of ways. Still waiting for the infrastructure package to come out. But it's really, really nice to know other people are saying. So now I think this short session here, I think there's $10 or $20 million coming out. That's a drop in the bucket, but at least it's dripping.
Okay.
And if we don't address mental health, none of the problems we're dealing with are ever going to go away. Yeah. And there are ways to do it. It's not the forum for that, but we have to do something. I mean, we have, our fire department, it's a special district, but, we're a big customer. They have a call to the same person almost every day. Yeah. And so we have to teach the police and fire how to be mental health workers. Now we're starting to bring social workers into our library. And again, that wasn't our idea. We knew it was working in other places. Said, let's try it. And it's been so successful, we're adding a second person. Washington County has people going in the cars with the officers who deal or are trained to deal with homeless or whatever it may be. And the police are very happy to see that happen. But it was exciting to hear everybody start to talk about mental health.
And so that's, you talked about the coast and everything like that, the middle of the country, Midwest, different regions. Was there anything that differentiated regionally, or is it pretty universal?
Well, I would say just on the universal side, if you want to get a cheap clap out of the audience of mayors, just say something about infrastructure, right? I mean,
we heard me say it.
Yeah, right. We heard you say it. We heard Mayor Pete was there giving a speech, as well as former Mayor Bloomberg was there, both heavy on the infrastructure, knowing their audience and who they were talking to. I mean, that's the real unifying factor is whether you're talking East Coast, Midwest, or West Coast, everything from wastewater facilities to water treatment. We have, as a nation, are very much behind the curve on investing in investing in our infrastructure. And so why was I there? And why was I talking to Senators Merkley and White? Is we got an $80 million wastewater treatment facility that we got to do in the city of Sandy. And, we're quickly growing. I used the number, we're about 12,000 people, but you got to remember 4,000 are kids. Yeah. And then you got a lot of people like to live together, right? So you're really talking about 3,500 total ratepayers on an $80 million project. And that's just the city of Sandy. Estacada is up against the same mandate. We're all being mandated by DEQ, and for good reason. I'm not fighting DEQ's mandates. We need to invest in our water infrastructure. But now we're stuck doing it on our own. Estacada's stuck doing it on their own. Gladstone's stuck doing it on their own. I mean, there's a big crisis that's popping up here. And we want to talk housing and homelessness. If I increase the costs on my ratepayers to pay for some of this infrastructure, or on my SDCs, my system development charges onto my developers, that becomes a pass-through, and it's making housing more expensive and everything else. So getting some true investment from the federal government and the state in what we're trying to do in our local communities. I mean, to me, we talk homelessness and all that, and that's a huge factor, right? But infrastructure in this country, I think, is something wherever you are politically, on the party, the United States, our country, should still be able to get over our differences to do an infrastructure package nationwide in this country.
Because, the people that go on and measure these things still, I've been doing it, 12 years now. 12 years ago, our infrastructure was rated at best as a D+. Yeah. Today, it's still a D+, right, and perhaps shrinking. And it was so sad, in the first year of the current president's term, the House and the Senate actually had an infrastructure package and a way to pay for all this in place. Instead, they took that and turned it into the tax cuts. And if you want to get Senator Wyden going, ask him that question. He's very passionate about that. And there's a whole lot of people, but it is what it is. So now they got to cook up another way to pay for that.
So conferences like this, I know they're networking, things like that. Do you find that they are an effective means of advocating for your issues? Is it a very effective way to do this?
Well, having done it for a while, it is most definitely, because then you kind of unite in maybe your small groups. Maybe it's the task force on ports and exports and business and what I'm on 4 or 5 different committees there. And then you can formulate what are your top 2 or 3 so that the whole organization can speak. West Coast, East Coast, Texas, Kentucky, Michigan, you name it. And when that has a powerful effect on most people that are elected at the federal level. And at least they'll listen to you. And so we can all say, this is important. Now, you were the first timer. Did you get that sense?
Well, I did, and so now you've got everyone from senators, which you mentioned, going to the White House and the president's team hearing issues. And I'll just go back to infrastructure again. They hear, all right, the mayors at the U.S. Conference of Mayors are pushing forward infrastructure. So they hear that, but then they get us individually going to our delegation. And now it's not just the mayors are pushing infrastructure. It's Sandy has this huge wastewater treatment issue. Over in Beaverton, they're facing this issue on infrastructure. Then it starts to become real because these are communities you drive through, people in, you represent. And so having that big picture advocacy mixed with kind of the hometown stories of the areas in which they represent, it's really effective. Or at least in my first year, it seems to have been very effective.
And it seems to be, too, because at that level, nobody can read anybody else's mind. So you have to be your own advocate. And so, again, strengthen numbers and coming in as more of a coalition.
And our delegation constantly says to us, send us examples. And it doesn't have to be 1,022 of them. It's 3 or 4 powerful ones that can come up. And I guarantee you, every community on most every issue has 1 or 2. And they use that in turn to go to their colleagues. And now you have mayors from around the country doing that to the D's and the R's in their state. And that has an impact. Some stuff is actually happening back in D.C., despite all the...
Do tell.
Yeah, they're funding X, Y, and Z. So,
okay, good.
And also, when budget cuts are made by the Oval Office, they're restoring it for the arts, for housing, for the different measures that we have to keep apartments repaired. At least they try to erase that. It always comes back because the rest of the people understand, be it a Democrat or a Republican House or Senate, they still have a connection with people.
Yeah.
And that's why I wish we had more mayors going from mayors to some service at the federal level. I've known at least 4 or 5 in the past administration, really good mayors that got really good jobs. And boy, did we have an audience with the president.
You're right, because mayors do have a unique perspective. I mean...
That's why Mayor Mike and Mayor Pete rocked it.
That's right.
Okay, so
they're living our dream.
You had Pete Buttigieg and Mike Bloomberg, both of whom are running for president on the Democratic ticket.
Right.
What was that? I mean, so you got to interact, or was it more of a...
They talked.
Okay. Yeah. Was it valuable?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
As someone who's probably not going to find themselves voting for either one of those two anytime soon, what I would say is that it's intriguing to have mayors representing us at the highest levels of government. And in fact, if I had to pick a ticket from that side running for president, I wouldn't mind seeing a mayor's ticket about taking some of our local issues that we're seeing at the ground level and taking that to the national level. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
Because as the population shifts to cities, the need is great.
That's right.
Yeah, we can't forget the rural challenges they have, and Oregon's a perfect example. It's really different on the east side versus the west side.
Yeah.
But also I'm starting to see more and more talking about, well, if we fix I-5, I get my stuff that I've grown in Eastern Oregon to market quicker and more reliably. And those are the kind of discussions we need to have. Everybody's got to recognize what the challenges are across the board. And we can't fix everything, but there's a ton we can do. Education, everybody needs pre-K. And it can be done. And it's another one of my things I've been talking about for years. That I'm starting to hear other mayors say, pre-K. And I go, oh, married to an educator is probably a good thing. But also, every study you see says that solves a whole bunch of problems.
That's right.
So, but if you don't talk to people, the people in Connecticut may not have thought about it. Or are we picking on Connecticut?
That's right. Yeah. Are you picking on Connecticut?
Yeah. We mentioned Maine. But the point is, you got to hear it. And people can say, you're really off, or here's what we're doing.
And that's what I like is the best practices, or hey, we tried this in our little city in Vermont and it worked great, and it may work over here.
The one thing I would say is we should be picking on Iowa, not on Connecticut.
Iowa. I gotta be careful about Iowa.
But just not to get too back on the infrastructure train, but for folks listening to this, so one thing I say is everything in Washington D.C. happens at a breakneck speed these days because it's all around politics.
Right.
We don't work bills like we used to and legislation like we used to, and shape them.
Yeah.
So as a result, if infrastructure happens, it's going to move fast.
Yeah.
And guess who's going to get the projects? Those of us with shovel-ready projects ready to go. Right. So if you're not doing anything else in your community right now but getting projects ready to go online in the case of an infrastructure package that makes its way through Congress, you're not doing your job, quite frankly, and you need to be communicating those priorities to your delegation.
You could have both our senators say exactly that.
Yep.
Be ready because it moves at lightning speed. And if you're not ready, by the time you are, the funding's gone.
And you're out of luck.
That's right.
And then your constituents are out of luck.
Until the next time it happens. And when was the last time we had a major infrastructure package?
I can't remember. Just like when's the last time we raised the gasoline tax? 35 years ago?
Right.
The roads and all construction costs remain the same, right? I'm being facetious.
I am like,
come
on. Okay, let's shift gears just a little bit because you had to have had some fun when you were over there. So you're in D.C., you're with a bunch of mayors, you're with a bunch of people that really you sort of speak your language, you have a lot in common. Was there anything that stuck out in either of your minds as far as that was something unique and
he's
fun?
Smiling.
Yeah,
he is smiling.
I don't know where you're going. The one thing that was kind of fun, we were talking about this before we went online here, is so a bunch of us went to go visit the White House. The president hosted us. And anyone from Oregon that's been in and out of D.C. has a good understanding of that 6:45 Alaskan airline flight home, right?
Did you make it?
Well, we made it, barely. we ended up having to leave early. So going in, the big discussion was would you be able to leave early in order to make your flight? And there were other mayors that were giving us a lot of advice that would be impossible. But a few of us had never been to the White House before.
Right, and you want to go.
We wanted to go. So we end up going and realizing real quick when the president didn't even start speaking till 5 o'clock that 6:45 was going to be really tough. So he started speaking but we'd kind of been whispering to staff like this may not be good news for us. We might have to get out of here. And they had arranged for us to kind of exit out the back real easy. Now, I'm not going to give names here, but as we're exiting out of out of the room, we start to walk across, and we look up, and I go, "Holy smokes!" I mean, it's just a straight shot view of the president of the United States giving his speech. Now, I was not the mayor that did this, but there is a mayor that instantaneously pulls out the phone and doesn't just take a picture. I mean, you would have thought working for the New York Times, I mean, just snapping away. And the shots, I've shared this on social media, but the shots of the look on the security face. And if you zoom in and see just the flashy look that President Trump gave, like, what are you doing, man? You're not supposed to be doing this. It was one of those moments that you're not going to forget very easily.
And for the record, cool. I was not in that group.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But it was fun, and to that, it didn't matter if you were a huge city mayor, big city mayor, or, small Sandy, what party you're in, the moment people walked into the White House, taking out the cell phones and snapping pictures, we were all right back in high school civics class dorking out, right?
I would imagine it would just be a factor.
Yeah. I've been lucky enough to do that more than once over the years, but...
So you're kind of like,
you can only do it once as a mayor if it's your first year as being a mayor.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
so
right.
anything similar to that for you?
I just... I attend a Latino Network awards dinner, and I go back a long way. Back in the day when they had like 35 people, now it's hard to find a chair, but it's a lot of fun, and they expect it. And, they're very supportive, but it's fun to see the presence of the Latino community at our national level. Yeah. Face it. It's going to be 20% of Americans are going to be from Central South America and Mexico, just like way back when 30% were from Europe. Yeah. So we're all doing this together, and it's so much fun to watch them give awards. Yeah, and plus Maddie, who runs this thing, doesn't give long speeches at a dinner, which is really good.
Right.
No, so it's important to do that, and just the networking after events, people come back to the hotel, the 2 main hotels. You start to talk to people again. That's where you get some real candid conversations.
Yeah, I bet.
And it's fun.
Now, you must have known that Latino event was not black tie. So they had communicated to me black tie, which meant I told my wife black tie.
This is me right here. No tie at all.
So there was not a black tie event, and I was in the doghouse pretty quick with my wife.
Well, it's just a life lesson.
That's exactly right.
Now you know for next time.
Right.
But most people were dressed up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we had sports coats on, but I definitely didn't have a tie.
Didn't have a tie on.
But it's a great social before, and the meal's good. And, we have, then there's lots of little events by vendors, so you can go learn about products. Major League Baseball had a little, celebrate baseball. And if you sign up, they send you a hat of your favorite team. And then some of us go out there. We started Little League girls, Little League boys, whatever, Pee-wee stuff. I love doing that
nice.
stuff. And that's part of 7 days a week for me.
Yeah.
And they have things like that, ways to work with banks for financing homes. So they have a good core of vendors who fund a lot of these activities.
Yeah.
And the least you can do, if you're there, you should talk to them and say, what products do you have? We picked up a thing called Zen City years ago. And basically it's a tool that analyzes all the chatter in your city, on the internet, wherever, whatever that. It's not inexpensive, but boy, is it results. So we were we're second city in Oregon, maybe one of the first 20. Now there are over 200 people using this. So you get instantaneous feedback. What's going on? And you go, we didn't know about this.
You can see when something's trending on Twitter and realize,
And most things trend for about 8 hours. And they go away.
I know.
But it's still nice to know, and it's all automatic with your weekly reports. But again, I found that by going to the meeting. Other things happen for insurance, you name it, it's there.
Wow. So did you get a chance to do any sightseeing, or was it all pretty much heavy in the conference and in the venue?
I didn't do any sightseeing.
Did you?
My sightseeing was strictly going from the hotel where the meetings were to visit on the hill.
Yeah.
So if that's sightseeing, so be
Not really. Monuments and...
So my wife did come with me, and we got in the evening before, so we were able to go have dinner, and then as I had my meetings with the senators, we were able to get a tour around the Capitol and those things. I'll tell you, though, it was a pretty neat place to bring your spouse, because we've traveled together for her job and mine. A lot of times when you're a spouse and you're in a big city by yourself, there's not a whole lot to do.
Yeah.
Washington, D.C., I mean, if you have the ability to go to our nation's capital, I mean, you just should. And she would go and pick up coffee and go walk around, spend her day at the Smithsonian and stuff. I mean,
nice. That sounds like heaven to me.
So it was busy for us, but she had a remarkable time.
So she got to do this.
She did, yeah.
I always consider that is that's a thank you to our spouses for putting up with what we do.
That's right.
Yes.
That's exactly right.
Being a mayor is being the spouse of a mayor.
We pay the way for our spouse to join us.
Yes.
My wife doesn't too much grandma duty now for her.
Right.
But it's in D.C. is a phenomenal city to go look at.
Yeah.
You could spend probably 2 months in just the Smithsonian.
Oh my gosh.
I went to the Treasury. That was about as exciting as watching water drip. Don't tell me. But there's some other really neat Supreme Court, the Library of Congress. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's one of the few cities where you can feel history.
Yeah, exactly.
Philadelphia in some small spots comes close.
Sure. Yep.
But
D.C.
nothing like it on the West Coast.
Yeah, no.
Well,
no.
Not up here.
You feel like you can make a difference when you're there, too. Yeah. Everything's right there for you.
Yeah.
Wow, it sounds like it was incredible. I think people listening to this, if there are mayors listening to this who maybe had not thought about, maybe you would definitely recommend getting involved and going next year.
I hope they still make this offer, because when they got me to come, because the city never participated, I was told it's too expensive. Well, it's not, in my opinion. But the first conference that I went to, they paid for the conference, so you can do a test drive. You got to take your plane ticket and hotel. But I'm not sure they're still doing it.
I need to follow up on that. That's a good set.
Well, now it's all for posterity.
This is about 8 years ago.
Sure.
So I'm not sure they still do it. But and also we've got the National League of Cities meeting coming up in the second week in March. And that's the great weekend where we change 3 hours sleep habits. And then guess what happens that Saturday night? It goes back in. So you lose 4 hours of sleep first day there. So don't plan anything, or if you're going, don't plan anything early on Sunday.
Yeah. So I'm not going to be at that one. We're small enough, and to your point on price, I had to pick one. And what I liked about the mayor's one specifically was there's less mayors. And so I thought I'd have an easier time getting meetings with my congressional delegation than being in there with every city councilor you can imagine.
Right. How many mayors are there? I mean,
there were about 300 attendees this time. And that was the largest it's been.
Was it?
Yeah. I think there's 18,000 cities in America.
Okay. I didn't know what the number was. And
that's
put you on the spot, but good for you knowing that.
That's the number toss at you,
Yeah.
So when you win an award for Money Magazine or whatever, and you're like, we were just got a real nice blessing as the number 3 best city to raise a kid in America.
Congratulations.
We've been in the top 63 or 4
Wow.
years. So when that happens, your staff's doing something right.
Yeah.
It's not the mayor.
It's not the mayor.
It's the staff making this all happen.
That's right.
We just cheerlead.
That's right.
So.
Well, I want to go next time, and I guess I better run for mayor.
You got to be ready for long days.
Yeah.
And or else become work for a mayor. You can go and be their right or left hand.
That's right.
So,
Comfortable shoes.
Comfortable shoes, because a lot of walking.
And in D.C. in January, be ready for any weather on earth.
But it wasn't really wintry there for you.
We got some rain.
Got some rain.
And that was way better than dropping 10 degrees.
Yes.
We were at 28 degrees the first couple of days that night, but there was no clouds, so we were so lucky.
And we're so spoiled for being in Oregon. We have the most mellow weather.
Yeah.
All right, well, gentlemen, we have we've talked for half an hour about this. This is we probably could go on for more, like you both said. There's a lot more to cover. But I want to thank you both for coming down. Once again, my guests have been Beaverton Mayor Denny Doyle and Sandy Mayor Stan Pulliam. Gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with our listeners.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
My name is Denise Nanke, and I'm the host and producer of City Focus, a podcast from the League of Oregon Cities. The League is a governmental entity formed to work with our members to help local government better serve the citizens of Oregon. LOC strives to be the go-to place for Oregon cities as a resource hub for advocacy, education, and best practices. While our focus is Oregon and Oregon issues, we realize that we have many issues in common across the country. We hope that this podcast will reach beyond the borders of our state to share ideas and solutions. If you have suggestions for topics or comments about any of our podcasts, send me an email at cityfocus@orcities.org. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and be sure to subscribe to this podcast to get notification when we publish new content.